I think I'm somewhere in the middle. I definitely am. You need to be. You need to.
Yeah, you need to be.
Yeah.
You because there's so many ways to contribute to any field of science, right?
Yeah.
There's academia, there's teaching, there's doing, there's mentoring. There's so many different ways, and I think you touch on all of those really, really well.
No, that's good. Thank you much. Yeah.
Yeah. So you have a PhD. You studied the effect of nutrition on behavior in dogs, working with.
No, in group living animals, but my tests were on deer, but it's extrapolated to kind of group living animals. Yeah.
Yep. And then you have a really popular blog called dogsfirst.ie. That's the web address for everyone at home. Check it out. I think it's a really well researched and comprehensive source of information for a lot of things, but really raw food is where a lot of people kind of gravitate to from, learning different types or ways to raw feed. And then also, I think what's really cool about the blog is that we've kind of watched this evolution as we've learned more about animal nutrition and canine nutrition. And that's something that's really unique. One of my favorite, I think it's your recent blog, you had said, there's always new information coming to light, demanding we reassess and make tweaks along the way. You should take solace from this. We're all feeling our way here. Few of us are very right for very long, and that's what keeps it all so interesting. The answers are always changing.
Yes, I pilfered that from Einstein, because Einstein was one day he gave a physics exam to his whatever year in college, and walking out of the exam, his person that was presenting with him said, "Yeah, Mr. Einstein, you gave that exact same test to the exact same students last year." And he said, "Well, the answers are different this time, so the answers are always changing." So that's just brilliant insight. It's like, to think that scientific consensus is the same from year to years. I heard this, I'm going to go off on tangents, but this was new to me. And I thought I was staying abreast of the whole obesity thing and heart disease, little bit of it. But I was doing a live with Rowan Sanderson from Bell and Jude Pet Food over here, and Nick Thompson, very famous natural vet here, and Brendan Clark, the president of the Raw Feed and Veterinary Society, like powerhouses of information. There's intimidating people to be sitting at a table with, but you just learn so much. You just hang on and try remember some facts. But Rowan was saying that the whole cholesterol thing with heart disease, and how many years was cholesterol incriminated in heart disease, and they said, people with heart disease have very high cholesterol. You need to eat less cholesterol. And for years now, I knew that wasn't quite the case. We've moved on since, but I didn't realize quite simply, as Rowan put it now, what Rowan would have the science behind it. But Rowan said all they were doing was simply looking at people with heart disease and seeing clogged up arteries, and they're saying the clogged up arteries were the problem. He said, no, your body was trying to heal itself with cholesterol. Cholesterol lowers inflammation. So if you're chronically inflamed, or diabetes, inflammation, or obese, and all the things that go with what's leads to heart disease, your body is furiously developing cholesterol from the liver. 80% of the cholesterol in your body you produce, you don't eat it. You only consume, your body only, explains about 20% of the cholesterol. So I just love that. It's just like, it's scientific consensus was set in stone for 20 years, 30 years that high cholesterol was the problem. And now we turn on our head. So we should never just accept everything is just, oh, that's done. It's never done. Things are always moving, certainly in nutrition. Like, we're just tip of the iceberg in nutrition. It's only now. They're still so reluctant, aren't they, Nicola, to kind of look at health, to study health. We study disease, dis-ease. That's when, the shit has hit the fan at that stage. And in your long line of health of 0 to 100, you're in the last 10% when you start getting disease. And so few people, there's so little money invested in the 90%. And, we know that most cancer, 90% of cancer, environmental factors. And yet we pour money into genetic research. And so, guys, it's the environmental factors that's going to do it in. The gun can be loaded, but you have to pull the trigger. And right. So I'm fascinated with all that sort of stuff. I can't get enough of it.
Well, I think so. That's a great parallel. Talking about cholesterol and human health, heart disease, obesity. In the cause, or I would say the largest causative factor for a lot of that in humans, is the excess processed food / soluble carbohydrate, right?
Yep.
It's the same thing in dogs. Granted, they're not just predisposed to the same types of cholesterol type issues that humans are, the diseases still manifest from the same thing, right? Improper processed food. And I think, I like to think that's becoming a lot more accepted in mainstream medicine for humans, but for animals, it's so backwards. We're still, your animal has this disease, so you have to feed them this processed food. And it's such a broken thought process.
Yeah. I mean, it's, I think our dogs are the animals with the highest amount of cancer in the world. 1 in 2 dogs will suffer cancer now. A staggering feat, when they're not smoking or, buying drugs and stuff. That's a staggering feat to be the most cancer-ridden animal on the planet. I mean, it's incredible. Ultra processed food is still the number 1 recommendation there's scientific consensus out the window again, isn't it? It's incredible that 95% of vets believe that, this cereal-based cracker made by a candy company is the very best you can do for your pet, and fresh food is actually dangerous. So that's an incredible job has been done on what are our smartest kids going into college. It's that I'm not sure how it is in the States, but in Ireland, it's almost maximum points in our leaving cert in the final exam in school to get into veterinary. It's much harder to get into than medicine. Medicine is 530 points. Veterinary is about 580. Maximum you can get is 600. So these are some of our, if you want to call them the brightest kids, I would say they're the best at regurgitating information on the day, because exams aren't my forte really. But yeah, and yet they come out, they do this phenomenally difficult degree, and they all believe some really erroneous facts, and they just absorb it and believe it as fact without seeing a single study to suggest that is an actual good thing to do.
Yeah. Well, I think, that kind of brings up a great point, and it segues into your book that is coming out when?
I know, I can't give you an exact date, but it's completely out of my hands, and this time. So I would estimate maximum 7 weeks, hopefully 6 weeks, but I've said that about 5 times now, so you can't believe a word I say.
I know, we've been waiting for a while. But so the point being that it's not just veterinary medicine, but it goes for a lot of disciplines where students are taught what to think. And really what we should be looking at or striving toward is teaching people how to research and then how to critically think and critically evaluate sources. This could be such a tangent for both of us.
Yeah, there's a wormhole.
It is a total wormhole. But to kind of narrow it down, I think it's relevant to the myth that we hear so often, right? As pet owners, as raw feeders, there is no data to support feeding raw food. Well, arguably, there's no data to support feeding a highly processed food, or that proves that is healthful. Never mind disease preventing or disease treatment oriented. There was a recent editorial, I think it was an editorial that was in the Journal of American Medical Association, that was talking about how the phrase "there's no data to support" is one of the most dangerous phrases in modern medicine, because it shuts down critical thinking, it shuts down conversation, and it shuts down diving deeper into issues.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. That's spot on. That's spot on. It's a cop out, and it's used. It's a weapon that's used. I think people very misunderstand a lot of science as well. Science very rarely proves anything as a fact. And as I said, things are always changing. But yeah, you're spot on. The research thing is really interesting. Being taught how to think, I really like that point. I'm going to think about that more, because I'm staggered about the amount of really bad quality information out there. And I don't want to stray too far off nutrition, but even the idea of using a monthly flea treatment on an animal with no fleas, annual boosters for vaccinations, when we know the viruses, the vaccination, initial puppy vaccinations last for 7 years and longer. With challenge studies are showing that. Schultz has done that to death, we know it, and yet vets are still giving those shots every year because it gets you in the door, and that is absolutely erroneous. Even WSAVA, the World Small Animal Veterinary Association, they're the people that kind of set the tone for veterinary around the world. They're saying every 3 years, guys, and they're still doing it every year. So it's the fact that these things can just creep into everyday kind of veterinary practice, and they're just not questioned. I find that staggering, because I know you definitely are, I just question everything. I love it. I just want to look at it and sit down and investigate and read and learn all the different angles about it. But some people are too happy to be spoon-fed their information, and that's okay if you're not charging for your advice, you know.
So let's talk a little bit about the premise of the book, and how you blow out the whole myth that there is no data to support raw food, fresh feeding. I kind of just want to let you go on that.
Okay. Well, I start with the start. Well, I start with kind of the bit of the background that got the thing going. That's probably my favorite way to start off anyway, because who doesn't like talking about themselves? But yeah, I was in guide dog. I finished up in college and I joined Irish Guide Dogs. A great job in Irish Guide Dogs came up, and they were looking for a trainer, puppy supervisor. I mean, the title alone was just, oh, that's got to be me. I grew up in animal shelters and that kind of stuff. And it's like, I've got to get that job. So I got the job. There's a lesson in an interview. Actually, my interview didn't go too well, but at the end of the interview, I stood up and I said to the 2 or 3 people, like, guys, you know, please give me this job. I really, really want this job. I made it extremely clear to them that, you know, that it was something that I really wanted. And I think that came across, I was told afterwards. So anyway, got the job and worked at Irish Guide Dogs for a few years. And then a job came up in Australian Guide Dogs on the west coast of Australia in Perth. So, you know, walking dogs in the sunshine is slightly more attractive than walking them in the lashing rain at home. So I said, off I go. So we went over there, and it was there that really, you know, I bumped into the raw food thing in a very big way. The dogs are very strictly diet controlled in guide dogs. You know, you can't make too many changes, but you can make little bits and pieces. And as I was already doing bits of raw feeding in Ireland when I came out of college, you know, I wanted to mess with the population, but I wasn't allowed. You're not allowed change. You just suddenly, you get a job and you change all the dogs to a completely different food. It's not something that happens overnight. So you get to Australian guide dogs and you're doing a bit of training on the side to earn a bit of money. And I noticed that the 18 dogs that I had, 7 of them were on steroids or non-steroidal anti-inflammatories, various versions of anti-inflammatories. And I'm thinking, what's going on with these dogs that there's so many of them are on drugs? A random sample of 18 dogs, and nearly half of them are on really strong pills, and for recurring skin infections and recurring gut issues and recurring ear conditions and this kind of stuff. And apparently I was told by each person had a different reason why it might be, but apparently Perth was like the allergy capital of the world. But actually you'll find when it comes to pets, every city is the allergy capital because all the pets are on these drugs. So I started doing my bit of researching, and you know, Ian Billinghurst is the godfather of raw dog food, and Tom Lonsdale. The 2 of them are both Aussie vets. So Australia is way ahead on raw feeding at the time. Now probably UK is probably leading the way by a considerable majority, but at the time it was Australia. You know, everyone feeding food from the fridge to their pets in Australia, just an accepted thing. So I changed the dogs onto raw dog food, and the allergies just disappeared overnight. They went from like recurring veterinary visits to no veterinary visits, and I was just blown away. And I was like my tail's wagging furiously, and I'm running around with this going, I fixed it, I'm a genius. I run up to these vets, very great vets, and I kind of showed, guys, I did it. I did what you couldn't do, not in so many words. And I said, look, they're not itchy anymore. They couldn't have been less interested. Maybe not interested, but no action was taken. They just kind of half implied that, you know, that maybe what I was finding wasn't what I found. You know, they didn't even want to look into it, which is unforgivable for a scientist. You know, so it's like, okay, this is wrong. I didn't think any more about it until I started snoring in Australia, and my now wife was saying, you know, you've got to sort that out. We realized it was happening after a poker night, and it was from the beer that I was drinking over there. Found out I was wheat intolerant, and then I started thinking, God, how are the dogs better at digesting wheat than I am? Because we're all fed wheat-based dry food. And very quickly then you start adding things up, and you go, this is where the skin infections are coming from. And I blamed everything on wheat. Just change dogs to a wheat-free dry food, you'd often see just a huge improvement. So yeah, that was the start of it really. But it was the fact that the vets that I was dealing with and my superiors at the time didn't accept what I was saying. That really annoyed me, and that was the end of the job. I just said, like, you know, it's me or the dry food, and they said, oh, we'll take the dry food. And it's like, oh, so, you know, and you're ringing your wife, it's like, I'm after, you know, I'm finishing up in guide dogs, which I thought was a lifelong career for me, you know. But so that was back to research then, and lonely long nights sitting at home in your pajamas, you know, furiously typing on things and just coming up with staggering things. It's like, how are people not talking about this or this or this? These things that pop up with an internet search. People have been writing blogs about it. I mean, why is nobody talking about this? So But the last interesting point about guide dogs before I leave was that probably the most unacceptable of the whole thing, the affair, was that there was a guide dog school feeding raw, and it was in Australia, Brisbane Guide Dogs. And Brisbane Guide Dogs are just a phenomenal organisation run by an unbelievable CEO. What was her name? Lane, Laine. And it's just brilliant. And they had changed their dogs from dry to raw food. And I chatting away to them, and they're just saying, "Oh yeah, it's an amazing. The difference is incredible. Vet bills plummeted." And I'm like, "Sorry, vet bills plummeted. Like, have you anything to kind of back that up?" And so we're chatting away about plummeting vet bills, and I'm like telling my superiors in Perth, going, "Their vet bills are plummeting. What more do we need to know?" Like, we, and I could go on. There's an awful lot of details there, but Brisbane Guide Dogs were so enamored with the idea they created their own raw dog food. And I'm thinking this, and I have a small business background, and it's like, this is a phenomenal idea, because now they're selling raw dog food. They just put the stamp Brisbane Guide Dogs on it. Who's not going to support police dogs? I'm not sure if you've assistance dogs for ex-veterans or whatever. Like, who's not going to support? That's such a perfect organization. It's a great product, and it's sold like hotcakes. So that was staggering to me that no other guide dog association was seeing what they were doing, and then it all ended in 2015. So I don't want to say too much more about that. A little bit, what it's in the book, but I tell you, the statement by the American Veterinary Medical Association. Did you see that? Oh my God! Wait to hear this. I can think of a number of reasons why that ended. Why Brisbane Guide Dogs stopped selling raw, but it was their statement that I'm sorry, I'm looking up my just to quote this here. Oh yeah, it was actually the American Animal Hospital Association, the AAHA, and these guys in 2014 put out a statement on raw dog food, and it concluded with a totally erroneous statement. I mean, it's just full of holes, no support whatsoever. They use the word based on. Yeah, absolutely. So I spent a long time pulling this statement across, because these are supposed to be the top, organization for supervising vets, and it's just terrible. But they say, based on overwhelming scientific evidence, skipping a few lines, it's especially important that therapy dogs involved in must not be fed raw protein diets. So I was being contacted in 2015 by people in not guide dogs, but assistance dogs in various schools over in Australia, and they're saying, "What do you have to say about that? I mean, this is appalling. We feed our dogs fresh food." And that was the end of that. You weren't going to get insurance if your dog's fed raw dog food. And so fresh food was pulled away from arguably some of the most important dogs out there, Yeah. And I was really annoyed by that. So that might have had something to do with the Brisbane closure. I'm not quite sure, but yeah. So yeah, that was the start for me. I saw raw dog food being made over there, and I brought the idea back to Ireland, kind of hoping Irish guide dogs would put their stamp on it. That didn't happen. But I had a bit of success on the TV with it on a TV show, Dragon's Den. Do you have Dragon's Den over there? You have the Lion's Den, or?
No, yeah, I think it's Lion's Den, but I'm familiar with that whole bit.
The US one is way more impressive, but over here, and it was, so that launched the. But within 2 years of making dog food, I just hated it. It's so difficult. You're dealing with vets every 3 weeks here. 2 middle-aged vets come into you every 3 weeks, and they just think you're making this, toxic waste. And terribly ironically compared to the stuff that they stand over. And it was just, so I got really real pain in my face. So for the last 5 years, I've just been researching full-time, writing for the blog you kindly mentioned there, and the book. So that's just 5 years of full-time, and doing a bit of work on the side and helping companies develop products and stuff. So that's been the last 5 years, and that's got me up to this point.
Well, so there's a bunch of interesting points coming off of that. So let's see if we can stay on topic to kind of hit all three. One being at the last Raw Feeding Veterinary Society meeting, which we're both a member of, there was a really interesting presentation from Dr. Morkel Pinar. I think I'm saying that right?
Yeah, Pinar, yeah.
And you can probably explain this a little bit better than me, but I think all of us sat there in the audience when he was talking about the way that he runs his veterinary practice and how they do pet insurance.
Yeah.
And in order to get on their program and have a low cost veterinary insurance, it is required that you feed raw food.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it was all kind of something that we knew decreases veterinary bills and incidence of disease. It doesn't eliminate it, sure, but we all know from anecdotal evidence and experience that there's some value there, and they just took it to the next level and they did it.
Yeah. I've got a killer point about that. Morkel is an inspiring vet. One of the directors, and the other guy is Richard Doyle, who is another just genius vet who I met there a few months ago and had a good chat with him. But so Wiley Vets' premise, all the vets offer some sort of plan. That's because they need to get you onto a plan. It's almost like taking out pet insurance with Wiley's Vets. This vets we're talking about in the UK. So you take out your plan with them, and if anything goes wrong, the vets will deal with it. Wiley Vets has 26 vets working for them, and they're all raw feeding. You don't get a job with Wiley Vets if you don't promote raw feeding, fresh food for pets. No dry feeding vets need apply. And they're sucking in clients from 100 miles away. So imagine being a conventional vet within 10, 20-mile radius. So I take great solace knowing that those sort of... But here was a killer line from Morkel. Morkel said, so we got them onto the plan and we charge whatever, let's say $100 a month for a mongrel. And he says it's quite simple. He says we put them onto raw and they get better. And he says, but the glorious thing about this is that we no longer make money from sick pets. We make money by keeping your pet healthy. And I thought that just blew my top, because back in the day we used to have the medicine man used to pay. You'd pay him to keep us healthy. That was in Chinese medicine. You'd pay the medicine man to keep you healthy. Why would you pay him when you're sick? Why would you keep paying a mechanic when your car keeps breaking down? I mean, that's a shit mechanic. You need to change. So that statement that we get paid to keep them healthy flipped healthcare for me instantly, and I just fell in love with that concept. And I thought, this is genius.
It's an ancient idea, business practice, and we've lost it.
Yeah, but people see the truth in it very quickly, and they go, yeah, because so they don't want to see any cancer sneaking into your pet, so they don't feed them carbs, high dose carbs, or ultra processed food. They don't lash in the chemicals if they don't need to. They want you to come in as often as possible, 24/7, just walk in with your pet. Multiple checks from vets that don't cost you anything. And just keep on check that. They just do a very quick little check and make sure you're not doing anything weird. Yep. I mean, that's glorious.
To the other point, right? If something did go wicked wrong, a lot of times as pet owners, I don't have insurance on my dogs. We just went from 5 to 3, but it's expensive to own a lot of pets. Yeah. And I don't have insurance. They're all getting older. And, you go in and you're like, oh God, man, I have to pay for an ultrasound and a CAT scan and this blood work and, this biopsy and whatever it is. Right. So that ends up being hundreds and thousands of dollars really easy. Yeah. And in the way that they run their program, it's not a question. If they need a MRI or an ultrasound or a CAT scan or something wicked expensive, it doesn't matter. You're paying your monthly.
Oh yeah, that's service.
They're going to get to the bottom of it, and it's not going to be a question of whether or not you can afford it or not.
Yeah, that's good.
They're able to catch things early. They're able to address them, and ultimately, it just ends up costing less money.
Yeah, and they give you 10% off your food bill as well. So they stock all the food.
All the raw.
They might be getting, let's say, 30. I'm not sure what sort of margin. I actually wanted to find out about that. You'd be someone to talk to about that. But over here, the average might be 30% on raw dog food. Mm-hmm. So the vet's getting 30% on raw dog food. He just gives 10% of that to the customer. I mean, that's a phenomenal. Even that's genius. They're not trying to make so much money from the raw dog food. They're just trying to hook you on, like giving you crack, but also making sure that you are on the diet. So they know you're eating good food. They're not going to stock a bad quality raw dog food. They're not going to stock any food that's going to harm the pets because, they want to make sure that the pet is healthy. It's such a phenomenal, and that's the future for veterinary. I really hope, at least for a lot more anyway.
I know I've been working with quite a few veterinarians that are local to us at Northpoint in helping to kind of get them on board and understand that whole mindset and the thought process behind raw and the science behind it. And it's been so fun and so rewarding to see minds open and to help them with clients that they've struggled with managing traditionally. So I think it is changing, and to have different people and different voices and organizations like the RFVS and the group over in Helsinki has been so helpful in saying no, wait, there is research, there is data to support this, at least in some way.
Yeah.
So I think that's awesome. So
Yeah.
the other thing I wanted to do, and I should have asked you this before we went live, but I'll just do it live. Most people that know me know that I'm working on a almost like a second leg of one of the research projects that was done out of the University of Helsinki. So Johanna, Dr. Johanna, I can never say her last name, Antirimi.
Yeah, I can't either.
Yeah, they ran a survey that's looked at raw feeding dog owners from all over the world, and they wanted to determine what the owner perception was regarding the incidence of foodborne illness in humans that were feeding their pets raw dog food. So basically, if you feed raw dog food, does that increase your risk of things like salmonella, listeria, what have you, right? The list goes on. And what they found was that ultimately, no, and that in fact it may offer some protective benefits. And they also looked at, or they identified some other potential risk factors from where those pathogens could be coming from. So we ran a similar survey. We expanded some of those questions here. We tried to get a lot of US data, and we struggled with it because it's kind of a topic for another day, but a lot of raw feeders kind of always think automatically that any research into raw food is against it. It's an anti-raw thing. And it wasn't. I mean, we were looking for instances of pathogenic transmission or suspected pathogenic transmission because we wanted to determine why.
Yeah.
So did I send you the draft of that manuscript?
No, you possibly might. I hope you didn't, and that means I haven't read it. But no, I'm going to say you haven't.
But what I wanted to do was, I wanted to, I guess, discuss that whole idea that, oh my gosh, if you feed your pets raw meat, especially in the eyes of guide dogs, is that really a risk factor? Is that an issue? Is it something that's prevalent that we see pop up? And just debunk that a little bit.
Oh yeah, gladly. Like like nothing's 100% safe. You can't say that, you know, this product is going to be perfectly safe. You know, it's like when you recommend feeding bones to dogs. I'm just actually looking up the exact quote here because there's something here that can really help us. There's nothing. So when people want to know, like, can I feed bones to my dog? They want to be told it's absolutely perfectly fine. But like, you know, people choke on raw vegetables. You know, it's not a reason not to feed them. And similarly, you know, you could send people the fact that 48 million Americans get some form of food poisoning each year, and the top 4 causes of Salmonella, E. coli, and Listeria in the States are from seedy vegetables and fruits, and leafy greens. So vegetables and fruits are the top causes, ahead of meat, and you've got some problems in your chicken chain over there, and beef as well, but and eggs. They're down the list to seedy. So what's your point, vets? Are you saying that because there's a risk, or how about we just take appropriate caution when we're doing things, and make sure we're using good sources, make sure we reward the companies that are doing great things like Answers Pet Food and other sort of companies in the States that are trying to do their very best to make sure that their micro readings are blowing zero as much as they can. And you could talk about that all day. To blow zero it's just an idiotic concept anyway. I mean, which type of salmonella are you talking about? And if you're
they're not all bad. Everyone thinks that they're all bad, and they're not.
1,500 servivores of salmonella. Looking, less than 50 of them are going to, you know, have any sort of an effect on you at all. But like your Department of Agriculture in the States permits 17% of chicken samples to fail for salmonella, and you want your raw dog food companies to have zero salmonella. Like that is
25. I think 25%. So any 25% of the chicken that we could go to the grocery store and buy here, if I'm correct, it is allowed to be contaminated with Salmonella, Listeria, and that's allowed because it's sold with the intention of being cooked.
Yeah.
So that's where, in some ways, is here in the States. It's not the same for you guys over there, but here in the States, that's where raw feeding, if you're DIYing it, can get a little hairy.
Interesting, isn't it amazing? Like with, you know, the UK, Britain is leaving I'm running out of power. The UK have decided to leave the EU, you know, Brexit. And so they're starting to try and make friends with everybody to, you know, trade deals with everybody. So they contact the States and they say, look, guys, we make fabulous meat over here. It's all grass reared, and you want to buy some? And the States are saying, yeah, we'd love a bit of grass fed beef from you guys, and you can take our meat. And they're saying, oh no, we can't take your meat because you permit salmonella in the food chain. So the US is like, we're not taking yours. See you later. And so they learned a very lesson straight away that it's not so easy to trade deals when, you know, anyway, look, we don't want to be slagging off the food chain too much. But in answer to your question, so that stuff is in the food chain, okay? And salmonella in E. coli listeria comes from poor slaughtering practices, okay? Those bad bacteria come from the inside of an animal, okay? It comes from somewhere inside the gut of the animal, okay? So if you have a lot of salmonella in your food chain, then potentially raw dog foods, poorly made raw dog foods, cheap raw dog foods, whatever, could potentially have this on it. So there is always a risk, and never be naive with raw meat when you know what we're just after talking about there, and you know that's potentially out there. So that's the first thing. There is always a risk. So I wouldn't be going around, you know, kissing the dog after he's had a raw dog food meal and picking up his poop and taking precautions. All that said, terribly ironically, your American Veterinary Medical Association put out a highly erroneous statement on raw feeding, and they were warning people that, you know, raw dog food is linked to I just really want to find it now, and for some reason I can't put my hands on it.
Is this the SIDRAP article?
This was in here it is. Great.
I think we both tore that one up. I think we both put some.
Oh, did we? Yeah. 2012, AVMA put out a statement. I just want to read you a couple of little bits of it here. It says, several studies reported in peer-reviewed scientific journals, I love the way they spell that out for people, have demonstrated that raw or undercooked animal source protein may be contaminated with a variety of pathogenic organisms. Nobody's arguing with that, that's true. But then they say, secondary transmission of these pathogens to humans has also been reported. Have you already done this, Nicola, with people? Have you already done this?
No, go ahead.
Oh, good, okay. So this is in 2014. Now, bearing in mind the very first suspected case of salmonellosis from a raw-fed dog to a human occurred in 2018 in the US, in Minnesota, and that was suspected. They found the same salmonella in the person as they did in the raw dog food in the fridge, and they linked the two that way. That's the first case in the literature in 2018. This statement came out in 2012, so that was the first thing. So when they tell me that they put 4 studies after that statement, that secondary transmission of these pathogens to humans, e.g. pet owners, has also been reported. They gave me 4 studies. I just want to call you out the 4 of them here. I'm reading out from my book here because it saves me trying to remember. Now, this is interesting in that as of 2017, I was aware of no such study or report of any kind. The very first suspected case materialized in 2018. To support this crucial statement, the AVMA uses 4 studies. Now, this is your top veterinary body, top scientific body. The first study didn't note any transfer of pathogens to humans. It found salmonella in raw-fed dog stool and stated dogs fed raw chicken may be a source of environmental contamination. The second study states on the 4th line of their summary, no confirmed cases of human salmonellosis has been associated with these diets. The third, I'm skipping through them, the third supportive study was of 2 cats with unknown health histories. The authors concluded this report provides evidence that the practice of feeding raw meat-based diets to domestic cats may result in salmonellosis. And the 4th study talked about pig's ears and pet shop bones that may be a source of salmonella.
Which has nothing to do with raw dog food.
Nothing to do with raw dog food. So the 4 studies that they used to support the statement saying transmission has been reported, which is terrifying, okay? It's suitably terrifying. Not one single study that they used. They just put that in there and assume nobody's going to read the studies, and nobody did. That statement was so shared.
But I think that's the point to drive home. And the AVMA, there's so many examples of them emailing out, distributing information, hoping that the veterinarians and the professionals that read their email or read their statement don't go in and verify the sources. So they put sources in to make it appear legitimate. And then when you go in and actually read those sources, like so few of us do, I know you do, I do, and there's a lot of people that I work with that do, we find so many holes. And it's like, wait, this doesn't say.
How could you put that out? An amateur, a 4th-year science student wouldn't put that out, you know, but they put that out with such brazen deterrent, like it does such damage. And vets
I would have been ejected from my undergraduate and graduate programs for doing work like that.
Yeah, exactly. And so that information gets well shared on a veterinary, website, but you won't see shared on a veterinary, like your local vets, when, Hill's Pet Food, the biggest recall in history of a single product, millions of products recalled from vitamin D, killing pets. Unlike pre-made raw dog food, still you have to kill pets. They've killed tens of thousands multiple times. So not one vet that reports this and kind of says, warning, Hill's Pet Food doing a recall. You don't get that but you'll get a recall from a raw dog food company that's well shared. So I find that a little bit disingenuous,
Well, in that vitamin D recall, it wasn't just a recall because it was a problem with excess vitamin D. I think the big miss, and Dr. Yamka does such a great job at explaining why it was such an issue, and then why it was such an issue that it was so ignored in the industry, was that Hill's was not following their own policies and procedures.
They never checked a single can.
No.
22 million cans.
Two things, right? So they should have been testing their inbound raw ingredients to make sure that the ingredients were what they said they were, and they were at the levels that they were supposed to be at for formulation, right? So if they were testing their inbound ingredients, they would have determined that, and that those ingredients would have never made it into the food. And then if they were testing the outbound ingredients to make sure that the formulation was correct, they would have never made it to market. So there was so many things that were such a problem, and it highlights that the industry is so broken, and these organizations like the FDA or WASAVA or the PNA, whatever you want to call them, they can't police everybody all the time.
They don't police people. I mean, there's no nutritional checks of, like, I was a raw food producer for 2 years, and we had the BSE scare over here, so we've got different laws when it comes to even animal waste, 4D meat, dead, diseased, dying, disabled. That meat has to go for cremation over here. Okay, so whereas in the States that can go to a rendering plant, and rendering plants supply that back to pet food companies. So that's not a good idea. So we have to cremate that stuff over here. But even still, with the scares that we were having, when I was making raw dog food, the Department of Agriculture here come in and check your premises to make sure it's clean, and they ask you for your microbiology results every now and again. And not a single person checked my products for nutritional content. I can say anything I want on the label, I can put anything I want into that wrapper, nobody would know. No one's asking, and it's not happening in the States either. People believe because it's recommended by AFCO or it's made to AFCO's guidelines. AFCO is a toothless, non-governmental organization of pet food producers, let's face it. And
how you really feel, please.
Nobody is checking anything. The FDA is so poorly resourced in the pet food department, they've handed over all responsibility to AFCO. They've handed the bloom bag to the vampires. And it's just to suggest that these guys are patrolling, they're not. Nobody's checking these products. So it's only when deaths pop up and the pet owners are eventually listened to, when enough are dead, that they start to kick into action. FDA will go after them and shut them down. But yeah, Hill's Pet Food, top pet food on the planet, in inverted commas, certainly the best marketed, recommended by vets all over the world, and just 22 million cans of dog food, not one of them checked on the way out the door. That's just
oops.
It's staggering, and you just don't hear people talking about it.
That highlights, and I gave a talk yesterday, a webinar yesterday for Pet Connections Expo, which is a industry conference here in the States, to all of my colleagues, I guess. It will be publicly available for those of you at home, but what the talk was the discussion of transparency and why not only retailers, but pet owners need to start holding some of these companies accountable, right? So a lot of companies don't do third-party digestibility. They don't do third-party AFCO analysis to even determine what the nutritional values of their food are. They don't do inbound or outbound testing on their raw ingredients, which is a really interesting point when it comes to things like CBD, which have tons of toxic metals, and a lot of times don't even fall into the amounts that they're claiming to have on the label. And then, with COVID being an issue, a hot topic is just sourcing from China. A lot of companies say, oh, it's made in the USA, or, made in Ireland, or made in the UK, but it could be assembled in the UK or made in the UK or the US, but those ingredients are coming from China. Totally. And they don't have to say that.
Yeah, so, the biggest producers of meat meal, aren't they? That is a scary stat that came out again. Even last year, even this year, I think still there's huge, massive producers of meat meal. You know, if you're a vet and you care about animal welfare, you know, you would think that the ingredients used in your pet food would be treated humanely. And I'm not having to go to China because I work over in China and I do bits and stuff with people, and they're making changes and advances and things are moving along, which is good. But at the same time, I mean, you think concentrated animal feedlots are bad in the States, and you want to check them out in China. I mean, they're
Well, and you want to talk about bacteria. I don't know about Ireland or the UK, but I know the US, we send our meat over to China for processing and then coming back.
what?
So how is that safe in terms of bacteria and handling? You think about how many
You send your meat to the state to China to be processed to be sent back. How is that?
to me, it doesn't make much sense. Apparently, it's cheaper. I'm not as much of a business person, so I can't wrap my head around that. But we do that. We do that.
That's nuts. I can't believe that makes market sense. I mean, that's staggering. Oh my god. Yeah. And to come back to the salmonella point, I could talk for days about that. Not just salmonella, but look, you know, a couple of worrying studies. You can look at some raw dog food companies. You could test 100 raw dog foods. You're going to find, you know, a few of them failing for salmonella. If they're processing raw meat, it's going to happen. They get recalled, that kind of thing. It happens. Your dog's relatively safe. Cases of salmonellosis in pets is pretty rare, but it can happen in sick and very stressed animals. But very interestingly, when another statement by another veterinary group in 2016, we're talking about the threats to humans. It's very interesting that there was no threats in 2016, but in the 10 years before 2016, 132 people got salmonella from dry pet food. And I've got the 4 studies. They're up on my website. You can check out my blog, dogsfirst.ie. I've got that repeated a good few times. The fact that 132 humans have got salmonella from dry food, that's never ever mentioned by any vet anywhere. And unbelievably, exactly half of those 132 were toddlers under the age of 2 years old, because the bags of dry food are left on the floor. Now, whoever talks about that bag of dry food, nobody's ever warned you dry food might be dangerous, but it is.
Processed food is perceived as safe, right? So how many people scoop their dry food and then don't wash their hands?
I've tasted it loads of times. I've just tasted it and just used it for flicking treats when I was in guide dogs, and you know, it does taste disgusting. I'll taste the chicken one to see if I can taste the difference between that and the beef one. I mean, you might as well be sucking on a pig's ear. So, but then there's a whole, like, I mean, storage mites after 3 weeks and the stuff which cause immune reactions in pets. Aflatoxin, oh my god, mycotoxins. Mycotoxins are the most carcinogenic natural substances on the planet. Check them out. That little green fur you get on peanuts, if you didn't put them out for the birds, some of them can be mycotoxins. Aflatoxin, stuff that grows on moldy, crappy grain. So if you can't sell it for humans, they just leave it outside and they just bail it into a pet food company. And this is where you've stories out there. Check out Susan. If people haven't heard of Susan Thixton's blog, Truth About Pet Food, you know, staggering some stats coming out of that. But there was a plant, I think it was in Missouri, that was found guilty of using phosphine gas to they have phosphine gas monitors inside the factory. Phosphine gas is the poison that was being used to kill people in concentration camps. It is highly dangerous. Why would you have alarms inside a food plant for phosphine gas? Because they use it. Your man's job, you hear, is spraying phosphine gas on the sear to kill the aflatoxin. I mean, it's just like that Simpsons thing where, oh, well, what do you do with all the snakes? Well, we just release gorillas, and then the gorillas eat the snakes, and you know what do you do with all the gorillas? So it's just staggering the amount of stuff that you could go on. But the fact that humans are getting salmonella was a really big thing. But you could go into mycotoxins that are killing pets. You can get into all sorts of other things that pet food can have, and it's just a tit for tat argument. It's just ridiculous, and it's nearly, you know what, they can't talk about nutrition anymore. They've tried that. They tried to talk about complete. We know complete is complete nonsense. There's no such thing. We know it's nutritional junk. So they don't talk about nutrition anymore because the likes of the Raw Feed and Veterinary Society is putting out such solid information. There's enough people like you and me writing and talking to people that you can no longer say that this stuff is better than fresh food because you haven't got a study to support it. For an evidence-based association, that's unacceptable. So they don't talk about nutrition. Now they talk about risk and threat. And so that's what animates you. Yeah, fear. There's a thing in sales.
Fear sells.
Yeah, so fear definitely motivates everybody to buy something. If I want to sell covers for your water tank in your attic, I'll just show you an image of a dead pigeon in a water tank, and everybody's buying covers for their water tanks because water tanks aren't generally covered in an attic. So like fear is their thing now, and so they're talking about the safety of pet food. listen, if it makes people be a bit more safe around food, that's good. And if it makes them choose good raw dog food producers over shitty ones, good. That's a good thing too. But if you think choosing ultra-processed pet food is going to make you or your pet safer, you are absolutely grossly misinformed.
Yeah. Well, and that kind of sums up the next point that I wanted to make sure that we hit. Need to admit when we don't know, and also support research that needs to go on, right? Yeah. So, to your point, there's really no evidence to support that feeding dry and processed food is wildly healthful. So it's the same argument applies both ways.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then putting bacteria into context, I think just to kind of close that loop, kids go and scoop dog food, or people go and scoop dog food and they don't wash their hands. People feed raw food and you wash your hands, you wash your counter,
exactly,
utensils, right? So it's kind of like a good parallel to the COVID thing. We're knowing that if we're washing our hands and wearing masks and being careful, you have a much lesser risk of contracting COVID. And if you don't, then you have a much higher risk. So it's the same type of thing, just managing that risk. There's risk to everything.
Yeah, people, I think, I think, certainly, I like the COVID analogy there, because, people are freaked out. I'm not going to talk about COVID because it's not something I know anything about, except that I'm living through it like everybody else. But like, people are freaked out by disease in general. They're threatened by bacteria and they're threatened by viruses. And we are told you must kill all bacteria. Up until maybe 5 years ago, that was the advice. Antibacterial your home until, don't go outside unless you put your cling film around your face. Everything is terrifying. It's going to kill you. Now we know that your gut biome is a garden and it runs you. You are essentially a machine for your gut biome. You are controlled by your gut biome. It is so interesting what these things do. You're all bacteria. You're more bacteria DNA by multiples than you are your own DNA. Like, I love that idea that you're actually just a machine. You're just a group of organisms working together like a beautiful coral. And so the idea that you need to sterilize the environment, you need those challenges every day. Sterilized kitchens aren't healthy kitchens, on and on and on. If you want to breed bad bacteria, you do a half shitty job of cleaning your kitchen and you're going to get. So like, we know that it's not as threatening. Do you know what I really like about this whole bacteria kind of argument is that since getting obsessed with the idea of just everyone freaking out about disease all the time and vaccinate yourself up to the eyeballs. I'm not some anti-vax, I'm just disease and injections and, treat the disease. There's causes, treat the disease. Your dog is sick, treat the disease, treat the symptoms, get rid of the symptoms with this anti-inflammatory, and there's another bandage for your gangrene, and we'll keep changing the bandage when it starts to stink until the gangrene kills you. So that it's the focusing on disease is because 100 years ago, Western medicine, got so obsessed with chemistry and pharmacology. Once we discovered antibiotics and stuff, we thought, Jesus, what else could we do? And now we're obsessed with taking pills to sort ourselves out, and all the problems that go with that. My point is that disease is the word dis-ease. That's what disease came from. It's dis-ease. And disease is generally, ironically, everyone talks about symptoms of disease. Disease is a symptom. So disease is a symptom of an unsettled environment. Okay, something's gone wrong. You name a disease. If you've got a headache, what were you doing? Are you stressed? Were you drinking last night? You got a crappy diet. You got a bad heart. Are you overweight? Are you stressed? Are you eating right? On and on and on. You got cancer. Are you eating a high sugar diet? Are you doing all the things that you shouldn't have been doing? But if you look at viruses, and I watched the fascinating thing about coronaviruses, and there's loads of them out there, and it's going to happen. It's going to happen again. You had MERS and SARS and Ebola, AIDS. This is constantly happening. The more pressure you put in the environment, stuff's going to hop out now and again. That's just what disease does. It runs through populations. You build up your innate immunity, and on it goes. You pass it on and on. Millions of years of evolution. Except, unfortunately, now death so terrifies us, and bacteria and viruses so terrifies us that it's unacceptable that diseases come anywhere near us. But a guy actually predicted this particular rush of this COVID-19. He predicted one virologist. I'm sure virologists are predicting things all the time, but this guy predicted it was going to come from China. A lot of them do. And it was going to come from the Wuhan province. And he goes, the only reason I predicted that Wuhan province, which, by the way, is absolutely colossal. You might as well be talking about Texas, probably. It's just huge. But he says it's because it's the most condensed population on the planet. It's just the environment is under such stress, and you've got your wet markets and stuff. And he goes, that's just a breeding ground. If it's not going to come from that, it's going to come from pig slurry in Arkansas, because pig slurry shit pits, he called them. He says that is the perfect breeding ground for insane, because you can't put the poo down the sewage system, so just keep them in open pits. You're half treating them with low grade antibiotics to kill off the weak antibiotics. So these things are just in high nitrogen, recycling themselves so many times. He goes, that is just constant. And then you pump it out to the sea or leak it out to the sea with a rainstorm, whatever. He goes, like, you're just asking for. So I love the idea that dis-ease is just a symptom. So just touching on the COVID thing, when your man explained that to me, I just thought, wow, yeah. He goes, and then I just got obsessed with every sort of disease. So I don't, yeah, I'm ranting there, but it's just like even fleas on a dog. You know, a natural vet would see fleas on a dog and go, Jesus, what's wrong with your dog that he's got fleas?
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's like, a conventional vet might go, oh God, we'll keep giving them drugs. He goes, no. Fleas do not populate a healthy animal too easily. They're not a big deal. And it'd be like seeing nits on a kid's head. You know, it's going to happen. You have a 1 in 10 chance of getting nits in England if you go to school. You 1 in 10 chance. And you name me the chemical that you put in the back of a kid's neck to stop that happening. There isn't any chemical like that for humans. Because if you get nits, you see a kid with nits, you know, you barf in your mouth, you reach for the shampoo or whatever natural treatment you want to use, and you fix it. It should be the same in dogs, but no, we've got to use this chemical to prevent this terrible disease, you know. So anyway, yeah.
Well, that's always an interesting point, because I know you don't, and I don't use any of that stuff on my own animals. And everyone's always kind of like, oh my gosh, but we don't have a problem. We have a huge horse field in the back. We live in the woods, and we don't have a problem.
Yeah.
So it's, you know, and by definition, by what we're told, we should be crawling with fleas and ticks and all kinds of stuff, and we're not.
Yeah,
so.
I do. I have a hell, like, I detest ticks. I hate them. Somebody very close to me got Lyme's disease, so I understand. Look, there's another thing that was touched upon. Lyme's disease, another symptom of a change in environment, you know, which again is. But anyway, ticks are on the march here in Ireland. They are seriously increasing in numbers. The number of mental Lyme cases is exploding in the human population. The GPs are getting more familiar with it as well. They understand what they're looking at now. But somebody very close to me went through it, and it's, you know, very risky, nasty issue. They call it Lyme's disease and co-infections, because it was about 5 or 6 other things that got in as well. So I hate ticks. And of all the things, I don't care about fleas. I don't care about worms any more than I would my own kid. But with ticks, I just say to people, look, you need to be familiar with what ticks are. You need to be familiar with how you might prevent them if you're going walking in long grass out in the woods. You need to be aware of those things, and not just be stupidly, oh, okay, I put this chemical on and everything's okay. You know, I just hand over all responsibility for my health to my doctor or vet. That's idiotic. Nobody cares more about your health than you do. Don't think they do. So you need to get aware of what ticks are and how to prevent them. And if you find one on your pet or you, what to do. And if there's a rash on your leg after it, what that might look like. People need to start taking a bit of responsibility for their own health. And with ticks, I do respect ticks because they're such, I could curse. And there's natural things you can use that can help you kind of camouflage your dog, for want of a better word, from ticks and stuff. Yes, so for some reason, some dogs seem to pick up ticks and others don't. You know, I don't understand it a lot, but.
But that's what I guess what you're trying to say is just more the individuality, right? So depending on the environment, your pet's susceptibility, the diet, everything, that influences their risk factors.
If you've got a you know, a Bichon in Manhattan, you don't need to be worrying about getting ticks, because, you know, I don't even know if there's a tick in Central Park. It'd be nice to see if there was, but, you know, probably not. But there might be, who knows? I'm sure there's foxes and all sorts of stuff, you know. So, but like, you know, there's towns and stuff where people don't walk through long grasses and hiking and that kind of stuff, and that reduces your fear of that. And for fleas and worms, come on, you know, gutworms are just so easily prevented with so many different natural remedies. Whatever you might like yourself, I like a bit of pumpkin seed oil, and you know, it's just so easily prevent it, stop the worms adhering. If they get worms, no big deal, but it's not going to.
You have off the top of my head, I don't remember, but do you have a blog on your site that discusses a little bit about that?
We've got worms covered a few times, and the flea one as well, where it's a two-parter. Most of the articles are in 2 or 3 parts. Yeah. And the flea one was kind of like just talk about this is the side effects of the chemicals. This is what we know. This is the payments being made. This is the sort of stuff that they're using. Like there's an article there in the San Francisco Chronicle that said, it was San Francisco Chronicle, one of the papers in San Francisco, It's like, stop letting your dog swim in the bay if they've had flea treatments on their neck. I mean, that's how sensitive this stuff is. So potent. I just nearly had the name of it. I've been trying to think of it in the last few minutes, but it's so potent. It's just wiping out the insect life in the water. You can't let them swim in the sea. So like, imagine what it's doing to them. It's oh God, it really annoys me. Anyway, people need to understand what a flea looks like, how to prevent it. Natural things that can sort it out. I don't know if you've got diatomaceous earth over there, guys, but it's just white. Yeah, white chalk. It's just dust your dog off now and but give them a brush. You see some black dust, you put it on a wet tissue, and you see if it's dried blood. If it's dried blood, it probably was fleas that your pet has, and then you deal with it. No biggie. If you have an infestation, then you might consider, going a bit more nuclear if that's what you have to do. I would never think there's any need to do that. But if you do have a very bad infestation and your house is crawling, well, at least then you have somewhere to go. It's just not something that you use willy-nilly. It's not necessary.
All right. Well, I think we've went on for about an hour on so many different topics, but I'm so excited that everybody kind of got to see into the way that you think and go about things, and just talk about all the different ways and why it's so important to research and challenge everything and not just believe what you're spoon-fed. I'd love to have you on again when it's a little bit closer to your book being available.
Yeah, I'd love to, Nicola. I'll just talk this stuff over
a little bit more. Maybe we can get some others on, almost have like a little bit of a panel and discussion. I think those are super fun. Those are some of my favorite things to do when I come over to visit. You're incredible, Nicola, because like, I don't know, I go to all those talks. It's easy for me. Like, I'm in Europe, you're in the US. It's easy for me to access places in Europe, and, no problem. But so I'm at these things and I'm meeting people and talking, and most of the time I'm going out because I might be talking. And if I'm not talking, I'd only go to maybe Helsinki, because I hold dog risk in such high regard, and it's just incredible. But like people are so lucky to have you over there, because you are doing so much research in the background. Like, you are flying yourself out to these places, the other side of the world. You're at least going across the pond multiple times to learn and hear what people are saying. And you're a powerhouse of information, and yet the veterinary industry has the gall to say, don't listen to people like you who write articles and use evidence and kind of say, look, here's the study, I'm breaking it down for you, there's the evidence. Don't listen to people like that. I loved your point where you said only talk to veterinary nutritionists about nutrition, as if you would talk to your doctor about how to feed your kid. If I ask people, how much protein did you eat yesterday? They go, how much protein did I eat? I think you might know you need about 90 grams a day. If I was to ask you what your RDA of magnesium was, you wouldn't have a clue. Or that 70% of Americans are under eating the magnesium because you're not eating enough fresh greens, exact same as Ireland and the UK. And it's like, we don't know those things when we're feeding ourselves, because that level of detail is irrelevant. But the vets will convince you that you're a bad source of information, Nicola, and you should only go to a vet who, believes cereal-based dry food without a single study to support it. There's only 96 veterinary nutritionists that are in practice, but not all of them are actually seeing clients. They're either in academia or what have you, or retired. There's just not enough of them to go around.
80 million dogs, and you've got those 50 people are the people you can talk to about feeding your pet. Yeah, right.
Well, we're in the midst of a paradigm shift, right? Where there's some of us, and I'm not the most educated by any stretch of the imagination, but there are a lot of people that are extremely educated, and there are people that do the research and do the work that deserve a seat at the table. Having that conversation, and that whole kind of what we were talking about at the beginning, that whole there is no evidence to support, and shutting it down is not doing anybody justice. No,
but I think it's not doing anybody justice, but it's doing some people benefit. It's just not the consumers. You know what I mean? So there's a reason why we don't get really high quality debates on TV anymore. We used to really worship good thinkers, and we'd sit there and listen to them talking and watch them debating on TV. The States was particularly good for that, and UK not so much, Ireland never. But that doesn't happen anymore. So we don't get debate because we're not trusted to know the information ourselves. You're not smart enough to understand the science. The science says that you're okay. It's just making calling people stupid. It's like anybody can read a scientific paper. All you got to do is read that first 10 lines, read the background, even though they'll mislead you in the background sometimes. Forget I said that, actually, that's just going to unnerve people. The background is written in language that we can all understand.
Right.
And a lot of the rest of that paper is hard to understand, particularly the middle bit of it. So like, just read the abstract and that'll be enough to tell you, what happened in that study. And you can go to Google Scholar. Google Scholar is unreal. It's just, it's free. And it's just like, if you've got anything that you're interested in, anything, what's the white thing on my fingernails? What is that from not drinking milk? If you type into Google Scholar, you'll get like 1,000 studies on it, and you'll find one or two that says, a review of why people have white tips in their finger, and you read it. Anyway, people do need to take the power back a little bit and kind of go, I'm not going to listen to everybody. I don't believe other people have my best interests at their heart all the time. Certainly not a multinational. It's they are there to make money. They don't love you. They don't hate you. I'm taking a quote from Maud Barlow here, very vocal critic in Nestle, and she said, like, they don't love you. They don't hate you. He goes, the multinational is a predator, and they feed on cash. It's a total unemotional, job. They are there to feed on cash, and the CEO is there to make cash, not to benefit your health. Because if they don't make enough cash, they'll be gone, and the next ruthless guy will take his place, or girl. So he says, like, that's just the way it is. And so you can't place your health in the hands of a company that needs to make money. You can't do it with anybody. And so that'd be my main point to give to people. That's how I run my life at the moment. And it's making me poor, but ultimately happy. Maybe my wife wouldn't agree, but yeah, I like it.
Well, on that note, we'll let everybody go. Like I said, we went on for about an hour, but I think the whole conversation is just so relevant. And the main takeaways: do your research, ask questions, and we'll have you on again soon. We'll discuss the book, and we'll expand upon this a little bit more.
That's great. Thanks so much, Nicola. It's great talking.
For hopping on. I know it's late for you.
Absolutely. I'll talk to you soon. See you guys. Bye-bye.